Sweet. I don't know. We'll find out. We will find out. We might be live. We might not be live. We are. I think we're live. It says live on the screen. By we, I mean just me, because nobody else is here. Oh no! Hey, look! There we are. Man, it's crazy how that works. Welcome, everybody. Forgot your notes. Why'd you bring them up with you? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the chat. We are so glad that you are here. We are going to just take a few moments. Trevor and I are running the show tonight because everyone else is enjoying the heat. And so we're kind of running around, and by we, I mean Trevor's running around and getting things started. So that's why he's not up here yet. But speak of the Trevor, speak of the redhead.
But I do exist.
You do exist. I'm starting watch party. Party it up with Trevor and I.
It is always a party.
It is always a party, man. Always a party.
It's really weird how delayed the feed is.
Yeah, because you just sat down on the screen.
I know, I just sat down. I've been here for like an hour.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, 20 minutes.
But you've been here, so.
I'm a lot of breath. This is kind of
from
embarrassing.
Walking and running up the stairs?
Yeah, I went down the stairs, up the stairs, down the stairs. That's a lot, man.
Oh, man. Your Frisbee team must be very thankful.
I haven't even been there in 5 weeks, so.
Really? Do you know what your record is?
We won all our games.
Really?
Since I've been gone.
In the A-League?
We're in the B League.
But last year you were in the C League.
Last year there were only 2 leagues.
Oh, so they added a third league, and you guys were in the technically C League.
Yeah, we promoted.
Okay.
Well, though last year the top division had like 15 teams. This year it only has 8.
Gotcha. Okay, so
we're a top 10 team.
Are almost done with the season then? When do playoffs start?
Not Monday, but the following Monday.
Are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'm there for the rest of them. They need some carry, you know.
All right.
You guys may not think I'm the ultimate pro, but
true. Hello, Scotty. Hello, Jim. Jim Kressel, good to see you, man. We are so excited. Not excited.
Oh, I didn't start a watch
thrilled. Party. You better start a watch party, man, because this is your show, Susan.
Is it weird to start a watch party if you're going to talk about yourself?
It is. We are talking about Trevor tonight. So there you go. Spoiler alert, we are talking about Trevor. Oh, man, we just got a comment. All right.
Why does that pop up like that?
I don't know, but it's weird.
Interesting.
It's Brad's computer, and Brad's got, like, some weird settings on his computer. He has the font, like, 10 times larger on his phone than it needs to be.
Yeah, well, you know, Jordan, when you get old.
He is a little bit older.
You can't see as well.
True. So his font is like 24 font. Oh, I forgot to warn you to turn the volume down.
Whoops, rookie mistake.
Yeah.
Except it's like my 4th time on the show.
So, Trevor, in the last 4 weeks, how many days have you been home?
I think today is 7.
Today is your 7th day. And where have you been for the last 4 weeks?
Well, we had the privilege of taking, 17 middle school kids?
We had 22 total there. So I think it was 19.
So 19 middle school kids?
Yeah.
So we had 19 middle school kids up at Bethel College.
Yep.
Which was a lot of fun. We had a great time there. Then we were home for 2 days. Then we took the high schoolers to Belize.
Yep.
Along with some young adults and some parents. And we were there for, I think it was about 8 days we were gone because we left Friday, got back. Well, yeah, I don't know the math on that. Maybe 7, whatever. Then we were home.
Friday to Friday.
I came to church on a Sunday. And then we left, I think we left Wednesday. And we went to visit Ambrose.
I think you left Thursday. Unless you guys left early. Did you leave Wednesday night?
I don't know.
Because Thursday was when Marissa and I left, and you wanted to leave with us.
Because you're so cool.
Because we're awesome.
Yeah, but we got to see Ambrose because he's the best. Woo!
Woo! Ambrose.
And then we're in New York City.
Brad says he's hurt by our feelings. Jim Kressel also said he was hurt by our feelings, too, of calling everyone old.
No. It's a fact.
Yeah.
It's not hurtful if it's true, right?
Yeah, you don't have to be hurt by it. You can just embrace it because you have so much more wisdom than we do, right? Yeah. So Trevor's been living in a car and a plane for the last 4 weeks.
Yep. We got home Wednesday night.
Yeah. After how many hours was it driving back?
I don't know. We drove back to New York City, so like 10.
10 hours.
11. I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
It all runs together.
And so Trevor's kind of running the show. He came back to the office today.
That's not true. You're running the show.
No. This is all about Trevor. So, all right. Hey, we are going to get started with the brain teaser. It is that time. Kim Chitwood, our Next Steps pastor, is the only one to successfully answer a brain teaser question. Okay? And so, Trevor,
The only one.
the only one. We've had Bruce, we've had
How
Brad.
many of you missed?
I've missed at least 4, and Brad's missed at least 4.
Okay.
And yeah. We aren't the smartest bunch here at Crossbridge. And so, Trevor, I love the color orange. Okay? I don't think
Okay.
that's, you know.
Thanks for sharing.
I think everyone knows that. All right?
I love green.
Yeah, I
Like
know
my
you
shorts.
do. But do you know how many colors the human eye can see? That's your question tonight. How many colors and different variations of colors can the human eye see? Da-da, da-da.
360.
Duh, you are way off.
5.
Red, orange, yellow, green, and blue.
Green. You just won
You
green.
can see 10 million colors.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right, but it is.
Hmm.
You've got thousands of different variations. Do you Google challenge? You want to go with my other question? How many germs are on the human foot?
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Like different germs?
Yeah.
Like how many germs or how many cells are germed?
Yeah. How many germs are on the human foot?
2 billion.
Well, you weren't far off. 1 trillion.
Oh,
I was gonna.
only a couple zeros.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that question because you always like to wear sandals.
Yeah.
And so I was gonna say, hey, is it just you're just attracting more germs?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Can you get more than a trillion?
Oh yeah. All right, hey everyone, welcome to C3 Live, C3 Thursdays. We are so glad that you are joining us today. We are, it's been weird for me because I have been gone for the last couple weeks. Trevor's been gone for the last couple weeks, and so we are looking forward to this. This is something that we do every Thursday at 8 o'clock with a few different staff members rotating and whatnot, just to engage in some spiritual growth. Sometimes we look at the Bible, sometimes we look at our faith, our journeys, and sometimes we just have fun, random Bible trivia nights. And tonight is one of those more journey stories where we're going to look into the man to my left, your right. Yeah, that is correct. Your right. Because, a lot of you know Trevor as our youth pastor as the goofy, weird-looking redhead that runs around Crossbridge wearing sandals and swimming trunks.
And I only wear Olympia shirts.
And only wears Olympiad shirts because he owns, 100.
I don't know why. No.
But, it's really cool for me because I've had the privilege, of knowing Trevor for the last 10 years. He was my youth pastor. He's now a mentor, or he was a mentor, still is, but now we're pretty close friends. And so I've had the privilege of knowing Trevor in every stage of life for the last 10 years and see his growth and what he's meant to me. And a lot of times, not everyone gets to, see the stories that and how much Trevor really puts into his job and puts into relationships and what he values the most. And so we want to, last week, Michaela and Kim talked about Michaela's next steps in college. And then today we wanted to look at Trevor's next steps and what they've looked like for really the last 30 years,
I'm old.
You are old. You are also old. So tonight's going to also be just a next steps journey with one of our staff members. We're going to do these hopefully with all of the staff members in the next year or so, but we're going to talk about Trevor tonight. And so I'm just going to ask Trevor a few questions. We're going to wrestle with next steps that he's taken in his journey, and then also provide some encouragement, some advice, some thoughts, some wisdom for you if you're wrestling with the next step. And so really tonight is just to get to know our youth pastor, have a good time, make some jokes, and laugh at his responses. So there we go. All right, so like I said, Trevor, you have really, it's been probably a 20, 25-year journey of you on the road with ministry. And so why don't you just share when and why ministry? Like, when did this start?
So I actually grew up, I grew up in a Christian home, I guess. My mom actually didn't grow up in a Christian home, and when we were born, it became a big priority for her. And so I really have known God, and that was instilled in me at a really young age. But for me, I think my journey to ministry really started, it actually started as a joke, which is funny. Our church did, what do you call that? Members, there we go. Like, I don't even remember.
Is it altar call?
No,
Members?
not altar call. Our church had membership growing up. And I remember we moved to New Haven. We were called up to be kind of, I don't know what they do in front of the church. And I walked on stage, and I thought we were supposed to, but we were really supposed to just stand on the ground. So I started walking up there, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to give the sermon?" Oh, and I was probably 8 or 9 at the time, and it was just this joke, and so then we were really good friends with our pastor's family, and it kind of kept on. But then in sixth grade, my mom started telling me, maybe seventh grade, that she believed I'd be a pastor someday.
Yeah.
And I still remember just like laughing at her. And my mom thought I was really annoying at the time. She told me she wanted to put me in a box till I was 21.
Just at the time?
Still does, probably. She loves me though, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so my mom really put that in my head at about, what would I have been, 11 or 12? And I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. And I heard a lot of dumb things in middle school with sixth grade boys.
Yeah.
And I don't know, so that really just started that thought. And she kept kind of saying that to me, and not like in a pushing me to do it way, just like, I believe God's telling me you're going to be a pastor someday.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't understand and comprehend that. And then it kind of hit me in about 9th, 10th, 11th grade, somewhere in there, that being a pastor doesn't mean I'm on stage giving a sermon every week.
Yeah.
We had, I was fortunate enough to have a youth ministry in our church, which was pretty common at the time, but not every church had one. It was still a somewhat newer concept, I guess, in the early 2000s. And I realized, like, oh, I could work with teenagers and have a lot of fun. And at the time, I didn't really know what that meant, but I'm like, I can play video games
You
and make
still
fun
know
of
what
kids.
that means?
I'm learning. Every day I learn a little more. And so, yeah, like, I realized, like, oh, I don't have to do adult ministry, but, like, I became okay with that concept, I guess.
Yeah, and so that was something that, you began to process and whatnot. But as you start having individuals tell you, hey, I think you could go into ministry, what is it, like, that's a question we all wrestle with, like, what does that even mean? Because there's so many different positions. You've got lead pastor, you've got associate pastor, executive pastor. Here at Crossbridge, Kim's our Next Steps pastor, which is a position we just created. I'm the young adults pastor, so college pastor. So many different. But then you've got different leaders in finances and business
Do you think I
that
should
are
handle
also
the
doing
finances?
ministry. I think you should.
I think so, too.
Who are also doing ministry in their context as well. And so why did you choose youth ministry?
It's interesting. Like, looking back, you name all these things, but I grew up in a fairly small church. We had 120 people, I think, at the peak. We had one pastor, and we had a secretary. And then when I was in 5th grade, for the very first time, our church hired their first youth pastor, and we kind of kept people throughout there. And so I wouldn't even say I knew about other stuff. It was kind of like, oh, ministry is like 2 options, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know. For me, I had a lot of people who invested in me as a teenager.
Yeah.
I had, the lead pastor at our church was really, he was a mentor to me from like 5th grade on, which, what lead pastor spends time with a 5th grade boy? Like, that's like the worst thing I can imagine. As a lead pastor, Bruce should start doing that more, I think.
Hey, Bruce. There's your homework assignment.
And then I had lots of other people and people in our church. I started drumming in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the older people in our church would come up and talk to me. And I just felt like I was really, really fortunate. And I had so many people who, as I know I was the most obnoxious kid in our church. Like, there's no doubt about it. And when people come up to me and they're like, how do you deal with these kids? And I'm like, well, I was worse than all of them. So I just had so many people who were willing to come alongside me as this middle school and high school kid who was clueless.
Yeah.
And most of them probably wanted to run out of the church. We actually had people who would get up and walk out of our service when I drummed.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But yet they would come back and they were still willing to, like, talk to me and mentor me. They're like, we don't like what you're doing, but, like, we still care about you. And that just really hit me. And I realized in that moment, like, most teenagers don't have people who will do that for them.
Yeah, and especially it's been really cool for me being one of your youth students. And Trevor does a really good job of not pressuring anybody to form a relationship with him, a teen that might not be comfortable, but then giving you opportunities to do so. And so for me, someone that was craving somebody who was going to pour into me and give me wisdom, Trevor gave me all the opportunities I wanted. I just had to take some of those next steps and asking or inviting, him into relationship with me. And so he always does a great job of not pressuring, but still presenting opportunities. And sometimes it's really hard to do with teens because teenagers are very hard. Everyone's hard to read, but teenagers, especially with just growing up, one day you could be their best friend, and then the next day they could hate you.
Yeah.
And so what about teens is so important to you? What is your favorite thing about working with teens? Like, yeah.
What I've realized and been able to articulate now, your dad used to use the phrase that we all have like a holy discontent, like something that just we can't stand and feel motivated to do something about.
Yeah.
And I've realized now that, and able to put it in these words, that I have always, even looking back to being a teenager, despised our culture's low expectations of teenagers.
Yeah.
And that has bothered me ever since I can remember. And I think being given chances to overcome and to learn and to grow really taught me that like we need to be doing that for other people.
Yeah.
And so, referencing back, I was, and I don't know why any church would do this, but my parents, I played drums in 6th grade. Like, terrible. You guys have been to 6th grade concerts, right? They're bad. I was a 6th grade drummer. That's where I learned. My parents bought me a drum set the summer after my 6th grade year. I owned the drum set for 4 days, and they put me in front of church playing with the worship team.
Oh, man. Hey, Jake, do you hear that?
So maybe we got some 7th graders out there who want to join
There
the
we
worship
go.
team. But, so, like, through that, like, I really learned that, like, teens just need to be given a chance. And yeah, I was not good, right? Like, there's no doubt about that. But I learned and grew, and I played almost every Sunday for 7 years at that church. And so for me, like, when I look at teenagers, I just can't stand when we place low expectations on them, when we don't give them a chance, when we don't believe in them. But to answer the other question, like, what's my favorite thing about working with teens? And this is something that if you don't work with teens, maybe you don't get a chance to appreciate, is the way they see the world is just so, like, they don't have all these preconceived ideas that we as adults kind of get stuck in our ways, and we get, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
Even when we went to Belize, right, I was more miserable than all the teens, and I'm thinking, like, man, I wish all these things were different because I'm just used to comfort and used to these things.
Yeah.
And teens just don't have those things. They will go with the flow. They'll do whatever. They're creative. They see the world, and I'm consistently challenged by the way they see the world.
Yeah.
And if you don't spend a lot of time with teens, I encourage you to just have conversations with them. Yeah, you'll get a lot of ridiculous things and things that just don't make sense, and there's a lot of immaturity still there.
Yeah.
But the way they see the world is just so different than like when we get old and bitter and stuck in our ways. And I love that. I think it keeps me challenged almost every day when I interact with them.
Yeah, it's been really cool with Trevor, especially more intentionally the last couple of years since we've, been able to do some different things with videos and different projects. For all of our big trips that we do, Trevor makes it a point to reach out to some teens that he knows are very passionate about different things or gifted in areas. And so one of the big ones that we do, our Discipleship Now weekend, half of the band up here is part of the youth. And then we usually have a video that's created from a youth member, something of the art, different individuals with service project ideas. I mean, the youth are the ones that led the Belize trip, and that's awesome.
Actually, it was the some of them were graduates, so like freshman college, but they were the ones who said we have a passion to go do something overseas. Like, and I told them on the trip, I'm like, I would not have taken you guys if you actually needed me.
Yeah.
Like, they planned it, they led it, they did everything. And you're talking about 17, 18, 19-year-old kids that we would consider them planned that whole trip and honestly could have done it without any adult going.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, I feel like when you give them a chance and when you allow them to some opportunities, like, they blow your mind.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. I love being shocked every time.
It's just cool. It's really cool to see your heart and passion for them, especially for as long as you've been doing it. For those that aren't aware, still to this day, the average youth pastor tenure at a church is at max 18 months. And so even before Trevor, when I was in youth, a 6th grader, I had a youth pastor my 6th grade year, a youth pastor my 7th grade year, and then Trevor came in my 8th grade year. And so the average youth pastor stays at a church for 18 months. We've been blessed and fortunate to have Trevor for nearly 10 years come September.
Or not blessed.
Or not blessed and not fortunate, depending on which pastor you ask.
Although Bruce's Facebook post was very nice.
True, Bruce, your Facebook post. Might want to change your password, buddy. But yeah, so what about Crossbridge? Or really just, because I think Crossbridge is great biasly, obviously, but, I think there's something just about you as well. What about, staying somewhere for as long as you have has made it possible, has kept you here for so long, and etc.
Yeah, so I had a similar experience that you're talking about. We hired a youth pastor when I was in 5th grade, and I remembered I couldn't wait to get into youth ministry. I'm like, I don't care, there's only 8 kids, but like they get to go hang out and have fun. Like it sounds super cool.
Yeah.
And then he left, and then we got another one, and they left, and they left. And I remember every time you saw it, like kids in New Haven were hungry for something cool, because like there's nothing in New Haven, right?
Yeah.
And we would grow our youth group to 50 kids. Someone would leave, and it would be 20.
Yeah.
We'd grow to 50. Someone would leave, and it would be 20. And I saw that cycle over and over and over again. I think I had 11 different people lead my youth group in 7 years.
That's insane.
Some of those were full-time youth pastors, but some were interns, some were parents, some were like filling gaps. So I had 11 people in 7 years, and I remember when I was looking for jobs out of college, the one thing I told every church was I saw the negative effects of that relationship.
Yeah.
And like I don't want to be someone who just moves around. I'm not looking for a bigger church. I don't, church size doesn't matter. Like if it's going well, why would I leave? And so that was the biggest thing for me. And I told people that in every interview. And Crossbridge, like you said, was actually looking for that, which was really cool. And something else that I think has really played into that, which I didn't really realize at the time, but I realize now, like, I make really terrible first impressions. I don't know if maybe because, Courtney covers for a lot of that. Courtney actually makes great first impressions. But I just don't do well with short-term relationships.
Yeah.
I tend to not care about people until I know them.
Yeah.
And I tend to think, why would someone care about me if they don't know me, because of that same mindset. And so I make bad first impressions. I don't put on a very good front, and I'm kind of a ridiculous person. And so I think being at Cross for so long has really enabled me to move past a lot of my weaknesses there. Where it's like I'm not trying to establish all these new relationships all the time, but, it really feels like the way God gifted me has worked out perfectly for being at Crossbridge, being here long term, and being able to, learn and grow really as Crossbridge has grown. And moved, and that's been cool too. Like you're talking about the video stuff, like being able to learn new skills and take on new responsibilities as I've been here. Has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Trevor, it's been cool for him because he's, been invested for so long to be able to see multiple of your youth kids end up interning here at Crossbridge and volunteering.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a super fun part. Like you said, like you were a 7th grader.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Going in 8th
grade. Yeah. And being able to work with you, or even like our most recent graduates, Michaela just graduated and was able to come back and do D now. Like, it's so much more fun to bring in volunteers who already know me and have already gone through what I've gone through and gone through what the students are going through. And you guys have a great ability to work with them because you were there how long ago. And so that's been really, really fun for me. We don't have to change the systems every year, but being able to experience that with you guys, I've loved. It's been one of the coolest parts that I had never thought about, because all I knew was people leaving. And like, what does a long-term relationship with someone who was a 7th grader look like?
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, well, for these last few minutes, I want to look at a few questions about what your faith has looked like for the last 10 years. Because, like I said, from behind the scenes, I've gotten to know you at your darkest times, and I've gotten to know you at, at your lightest times. And so, what role has God played in your faith in the days where you've been traveling for the last 4 weeks and barely been at home? What does your relationship with God look like, not just as a pastor, but as a youth pastor?
I don't know if I actually wrote something, but you notice it just says
You
God
wrote
there.
the word God as an answer?
I'm not sure what that was.
God is the answer to all things.
I think first and foremost, like, and I actually have this conversation with people all the time of when someone talks about they want to go into ministry with me, my first response to them is always don't. And then if they come back and want to keep pushing it, I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about it. But I think, the relationship with God has to be so center to what we do here, because like you can't pour anything out if you have nothing.
Yeah.
And I've been really, really fortunate here at Crossbridge, I think, to I know a lot of churches and a lot of youth pastors in a lot of situations who just don't seem to be growing with God
Yeah.
and like connected with God, and they seem empty. And you go to conferences and talk to these people, and they're just broken.
Yeah.
And Crossbridge, I think that's the thing that I've loved here more than anything else. It's just like my relationship with God has always been important to the staff,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the staff environment for pushing each other to have that relationship with God and to pray together and to talk about things and to those different things like that, I think keeps me more rooted than anything else.
Yeah.
And I had never expected that or thought of that. Like I said, I grew up in a small church where it was one guy hung out to dry.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think I would have been able to make it in ministry. I think I would have been one of those statistics had there not been a whole lot of people who helped me stay connected to God and stay grounded and all those different things.
Yeah. And then what's been cool for me is, I mean, even just recently, we talked about my sermon coming up on Sunday. And so then you have played a huge role in, your teens' lives, or really anybody who approaches you, or you see they're struggling and you approach them, to be able to wrestle with some tough stuff and make sure that our faith as a staff or as a teen or as a young adult is still the center of everything that we do. And so what has been kind of like, I guess, a theme verse for you, or something that, I mean, there's so many verses in the Bible, but what has been something that's been on your heart throughout this process?
Yeah, so actually, I struggled a long time in college with the local church. I got to a place where I kind of wasn't happy with the local church. I was like, maybe we're not doing enough. I got really bitter.
Yeah.
I think part of it was fear, which I can talk about a little bit more, but I remember really struggling and coming across one verse and not knowing what I really wanted to do, because I was 3 years into studying youth ministry.
Yeah.
And I was interning at a church and just really, really unhappy and discontent. And I found a verse in 1 Peter that says this. 1 Peter 3:15, some versions, they break 15 and 16 off at a weird spot. The NLT, this is actually half of 16. But it says, instead, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. But do this in a gentle and respectful way.
Yeah.
And so that verse hit me in a lot of different ways. So the first point, worship Christ as Lord of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That speaks for itself, but it's still just it's a powerful, blunt statement. The most important thing needs to be God. And then when it used the word hope, always be ready to explain your hope. Always have a reason and an answer for the hope that you have. That word shattered my life and just reminded me that, yeah, I'd been through a lot of ups and downs in my life and a lot of depression. I still struggle with that at times today.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've realized is it's when I walk away from God and I lose hope and I lose purpose. And so that word has always stuck with me, and it totally changed my view, because I realized I'm not just telling people about Jesus. I'm not just doing these different things. The local church, their job is to give hope.
Yeah.
And even if sometimes we fail and sometimes we screw that up and we as Christians fall short, what we have to offer is hope. And then it says to do that in a gentle and respectful way. And I've tried to shape my life around giving people hope and joy, whether that's through jokes or lightheartedness, which is what you'll get from me most of the time, or through serious conversation if that's what I think people need at the time.
Yeah.
And I've just tried to do that. And so that verse, finding that as a 20 or 21-year-old, struggling with what does even being a Christian mean, totally wrecked my view of God and of the church and of who I was supposed to be. And I've really clung on to that verse ever since. And I think I still try to model that. And I know I don't necessarily get it perfect, but
Yeah.
I just love that verse.
Yeah. Hey, well, for the last minute, before we end tonight, I know this went quick.
1 minute.
I know. For the last minute, what advice do you have for anyone that might be wrestling with some next steps? Because, these last 10 years were a byproduct of the previous 10 years, and then these 10 years are, setting you up for the next, we're always taking next steps. So what does it look like for you? What advice do you might have for someone struggling kind of in that journey that you have been in and that you're still in today?
Yeah, so there's a couple thoughts, so I'll try to do, this in the 1 minute you gave me.
Now you're down to 40 seconds.
I know, but I think the first thing is I've seen consistently in my life a couple things that I believe are true.
Yeah.
I believe every time that I've been serious about saying yes to God, I feel like God has presented, or there have been steps that have come up. I think every time I've been kind of closed off, I feel like I'm stuck and I don't see any of those.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're not there. I just think like I'm not in the right mindset or attitude to see them or know what they are.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think every time that I felt like I was supposed to move, it has been terrifying and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And going all the way back to when my mom first told me that, right? I told her she was dumb, but it's because honestly I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified of what that meant and super uncomfortable about being a pastor. And I remember every major step that I can remember taking has always been through fear and always been through like being uncomfortable. And so I think for a lot of us that stops us from moving because we think if we're afraid that maybe like we're not supposed to go that way. And sometimes, that is fear, and that's what's hard to discern. But every step that I've ever taken towards God has been through fear, and I've been terrified. And I remember, even when Crossbridge approached me, I was afraid. When I said yes to Crossbridge, I was afraid. And every step that Courtney and I have done along the way, it's been fear. And sometimes we walk away from those, honestly, and I know I missed out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you're in that journey, like just keep taking steps towards what makes you uncomfortable, and assuming it aligns with God and who God is.
Yeah.
I think God honors even if we take a wrong step. But I think those steps towards God are going to make us uncomfortable and afraid.
Yeah, it's the quote that we've shared a few times. My uncle shared is that everything worth doing for God is on the opposite side of fear, and you have to move through fear to experience it.
Yep.
And like you just said, sometimes we're going to take a wrong step, and we believe that God still responds to those steps, saying, "Hey, you were doing your best to honor me. Now let's respond in a way that can navigate you back onto the right track."
Yeah.
And so, hey, well, thank you so much, Trevor, for being vulnerable and sharing your story. It's been really cool to see you grow these last couple of years and get to know you the last 10 years. And so, for all of you viewers out there, I feel like we're on a talk show or something.
I'm going to walk away so I can turn this.
Yeah, you're going to walk away so you can turn it off. Hey, for all of you out there, thank you so much for joining us today. Next week, Brad and Barb. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Brad Maddox and Barb Maddox are going to be wrapping up our Next Step series for now, where they're going to be talking about their story. They're going to be looking at part of their journey, some of the next steps they've taken, some of the challenges they've had, some of the faith that they've had to incorporate in their life. And then we're going to do some of the other staff members a little bit later on in the year. But join us next Thursday at 8 o'clock for Brad and Barb. And then this Sunday, I am preaching for week 2 of our Let Us... series, talking about standing firm in the things you believe. And so at 9 o'clock and 10:30, join us here at Crossbridge, or you can find us on Facebook Live and YouTube Live for second service at 10:30. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I pray that it was encouraging for you to get to know Trevor a little bit more, hear who he is behind the red hair, and just how passionate he is about the teens. Thank you all for joining us. Enjoy the 111 heat index tomorrow. Stay safe, stay hydrated. See you on Sunday. Have a good night. Bye.